This is, and I, okay. I'm John Vernon. I live in Woodbury, Connecticut. This is my 35th year on the Connecticut Lacrosse Officials Association board. It's my first year where I will not be on the field. I decided to transition, and I will be doing the training with Rob, which we've done for a few years together, and I will be doing observations. Uh, during the season for officials who want to get feedback. And I work with Rob answering rules questions and mechanics questions and everything else that comes up during the season. We kind of share some of that responsibility. Um, so I guess my goal for this year is to really work on the observation program and work on giving people timely feedback. And a fun fact is I'm a ham radio operator.
Nairmore, you are up, sir.
Alrighty. Yep, my name is Dick Naramore. I live in Cheshire. I've been with CLOA for this will be my 21st year, I believe, on the field. Prior to that, I actually played the sport with a wooden stick back in the mid 60s in prep school. And I've coached youth in Cheshire in town. Both my boys went through it, coached somewhere in the early 2000s to late 2000s. And and then as I say, I've refed. Basically, I started refing because I was one of those loud coaches on the sideline and yelling at officials. And someone once told me, "Hey, you ought to see what it's like out there." And I've loved it ever since. It's the best spot to be. Um, Fun fact, I guess. Outside of lacrosse, I also do a lot of clock work for college hockey and college lacrosse, play clock, shot clocks, etc. And I like to play golf. That's pretty much it.
Excellent. So we may have a few times, and I just like to generally explain. And when we get to our in-person big clinic and big meeting that's going to occur in March, we'll have those different people. But our executive board, there's a number of officials who've been around for a while. But Al Tortorella is our current president. Freddie Cap is our vice president. Dave Leet is our signer. And so he's the one who's actually going to be handing out different games for you. And then you might be hearing from Chris DePasquale, who's our organization secretary, who helped with the registration, arbiter, and the background checks at some point. Before I forget, if you at the end, if you have a former name that is not what you're currently using, that is on your government ID for the background check, please just either shoot it in the chat, just your additional name or former name that's on there. We don't see it too often, but I always forget to ask that question, and then it usually delays stuff. So I just remember that. So if you have a former name, let me know. And then I think on the e-board wise, there's a couple other members. You're going to hear from Joe Sikora, who is back. He runs our mentorship program. So what we do is we run a 2-year program where we're going to give you an older official, and they're going to be with you for 2 years to help you. We generally try to do an assignment, and the assignment is fairly simple, but we have a 30 to 40% success rate when we ask it to be done is to call your mentor or text them, right? And reach out to them and have a conversation for 10 minutes. And it is so what we also try to do is off of what you've said already is we try to pair you by sometimes your occupation, sometimes your location, sometimes your age, sometimes your experience with other sports, sometimes your goal, if that makes sense. So we try to give you somebody who kind of looks and talks like you, as simple as that sounds, because you're more likely to reach out to them as versus, the 22-year-old out of college probably doesn't want to talk to the 70-year-old, right? They want to talk to the 30-year-old who's got really cool stories and still goes and gets a beer. Not that the 7-year-old doesn't get a beer, but you get the point. And then sometimes if you're a little bit older and you're transitioning in, as Ryan, I'll just use yours of, that empty nest. Sometimes you want another empty nester, if that makes sense. So if you have any kind of particular person you're thinking about, again, let us know, is we try to match you up pretty well, and then you're with that person for 2 years. So again, we have different people you're going to hear from in that. And then my quick introduction again. So my name's Rob Hollab. I'm our head clinician for CLOA and a rules interpreter for the organization. I'm also on the Western board as well, just as an official and not a board position. This is, I actually had to count on my fingers as Dick and John were listing theirs. This is year 17 of officiating already. I'm super proud. I'm one of the only college guys that is still kind of under 40 at this point, which is, it sounds really not impressive when you say it out loud, but when you realize, right, the average age of our high school association is about 55, and the average age of college officials is right in that area, 56, 57. You realize that is a lot older, and we're going to say it over and over in this training of who we officiate doesn't change age-wise every year. They continue to stay, 18 to 23-ish years old. They're faster than ever. They're stronger than ever because of CrossFit gyms and other things like that, right? And they were doing tremendous stuff, and we continually get slower. And I keep getting more creaky every time I get out of bed, right? And so that continues to happen. So you need to be capable of not being in amazing shape, but going on walks and stretching. And again, your best asset is your availability. As we always say, it's just being available is by far your biggest asset. Even if you're not the best official, quote unquote, you're going to get more games and therefore more experience, and you're going to see more coaches, and coaches are going to like you the more you're on the field with them. So again, I did 17 years. This is year 14 on CLOA. I spent 3 years in Indiana that we don't talk about in the beginning of my career. I coached at University of New Haven for 8 years, at a college in Indiana, and then I coached high school, including 1 year of girls lacrosse, which was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life, by far. That is it. That is insanely difficult, at the very least. But doing college for about 10 years now, and this is the third year at Division One. And again, to that same point, there's two of us that are under the age of 40 in the entire district for Division One, which we're super excited about, which it covers all New England. So we try to represent the youngins, as I say that, and I always say that lovingly right at my age. But again, you see there's a bigger disparity to get, and again, that's what we try to do as an organization. And you're seeing nationally, we want people coming in at a younger age and spending more time because we do have a really bad attrition rate. And that's kind of the last point I always hit, is that, the statistics don't lie, is that only about 30% will stay after year 3 is generally what you see nationally. Obviously, some states or things are different, but as you know, and again, I don't know how you basketball officials do it. I really, really don't. Even in my own opinion, you see basketball where you're seeing much more hostile and everything's on video, and you're seeing, unfortunately, officials who get physically into encounters and things like that, not by their own accord. But again, there are a lot of things going against us as officials. We're always going to, at 50% of the time, at best, we're going to be right according to anybody's perception, like at best, right? And so a lot of times it's a lot lower than that. People are going to be unhappy. They feel that we have a stake in the game. They feel that we care, and not that we don't care about the game, but we don't care about the individual outcome, if that makes sense. And even as coaches, you start realizing that once you get out of the game, is you realize that 9 times out of 10, the officials don't even realize what teams are playing, what day they are. There are a lot of games to do. Not everybody's in the same boat as me. I did 140 games last year. I can remember most of them, but I guarantee you that there was one day and multiple days I showed up because I followed what Arbor told me to do. I got to his school and I had no idea what two teams were playing. Right? You get on the field 10 minutes beforehand, you just do exactly what you need to do, and you officiate the game, and you're not sitting here going, man, if that team wins by 3, they get a tiebreaker 4 weeks from now. That's going to determine whether or not they go to the conference. We're not thinking of that. I'm thinking of, how do I get in here and do a correct job? How do I make sure my partner's ready? And how do I get everybody home safe? Those are the only 3 things I care about, right? And so a lot of the times, that is how we're going to train you, is to think of as an official and to think about being a game manager. Dick is phenomenal at helping at a lot of the examples he's going to do, but also doing youth, all of our youth training. He does that. And Vernon is by far, and I don't mean this as a fluff and trying to exaggerate, but he is the foremost rule expert in the country. Maybe the guy in Texas is number 2. to him. He is that good on the rules and knows everything. I pride myself in being a game manager, and that's why our this cadre works really well together, especially when John and I will talk to you, as John knows the letter of the law better than everybody. I can then implement it because have so much experience within all those games and say, this is the way I look at it. And then again, John will come back and say, okay, maybe if we looked at it in this light, it would actually make our life a little bit easier. So we're going to try to train you in a way that makes you prepared for situations you're going to see, as versus saying, hey, quote me rule 4 subsection 3 dash 2 5 HJ 3 2. You're never going to do that in a game, right? But you need to know when crazy things happen, what you need to do and what you need to call, and how then you can explain it to coaches and how you can move the game forward with as little interruption as possible, if that makes sense. I will pause there real quick. We're going to do a quick little activity, but I'll pause if there's any questions or anything else. No hand raised, good. No mutes. So we'll kind of do a minute to ourselves instead of doing breakout rooms and all that other good stuff. I like to go through as our first activity is, before we even start talking about what on earth is going to happen, of trying to place ourselves back into lacrosse mode. It was a struggle for me. I had my first game on Saturday, and I had to remember that even though there's 17 feet of snow on the ground, that we were in lacrosse season already at a college, which nuts. So again, trying to get mentally back into it. But I like to go through this activity on expectations. So just think to yourself a little bit, and then we'll kind of allow anybody to open a mic and kind of give us ideas. But if you put yourself in these 5 roles, if you were the players, what is your expectation of the officials when you get to that game? And then even during that game or after the game, as a player, what's your expectation? Remember, we're training you to be a high school official and a youth official. So think younger, not necessarily a college player, but you can use your experiences like that if you have them. And then we're going to go through what coaches expect of officials, what parents expect as officials, what you expect from your brethren and partner officials, and then what you should expect of yourself. So we're going to go through those 5. I will stop talking for a minute and we'll let you gather some thoughts. And again, feel free if you want to chime in because you were one of those or you still are one of those, you can absolutely use those examples. So I'll pause it for a minute here. All right, that was about 40 seconds. The most awkward thing you'd always do is say we're going to sit for a minute and then everybody stares at each other for a minute, right? A minute's a long time when you're not saying anything. Who wants to start us off for players? Or especially any former players, feel free to chime in. What, as a former player or as a current player, what is your expectation of the officials? Feel free, Wick. Whoever wants to jump in, be my guest.
So I think realistically, youth players, they want perfection out of the referees, but it's okay for them to make a mistake.
I would say probably fairness, where they don't feel like their team's getting more penalties than the other team, would be my, as a player.
I believe they're looking for be prompt, be communication is open with players and the officials. Also, looking professional, looking sharp to start the game, and pre-game knowing what the rules are.
All right, anybody else? Go ahead. Go ahead, James.
I have no experience with lacrosse, but I can just say they want what they want when they want it. Doesn't even matter if it's the right rule, the right call. I had a parent complain to me on Saturday that their team was getting called for every foul during the game, and when it was over and done with, we called 15 for one team, 12 for the other team, and the 12 is the team that she was talking about. So it's like they want what they want when they want it, whether they know what they're talking about or not.
Good, Casey.
Yeah, I would agree with James, but without having any experience. But yeah, I would assume players are looking for consistency and effort.
Yeah, I would always say my three I always kind of add is, the fairness. Everybody always says fairness every year. And I always say is when you think, even if you're a former player in any sport, right, is your perceived fairness is that your team still benefited at the end of the day, is how I kind of describe that, right? You're not necessarily thinking that and James, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? You're not thinking that, hey, it needs to be 15-1, but you want to make sure that, when you feel you were wronged, you got those calls. Right. And even if that is in balance and your team, right, gained 15 calls and there was only one against the other team, you want to make sure if that's that one that was egregious, you want to make sure they got it. Right. And that's that fairness, I always say, is always skewed, right, to our own self-serving interest. And that's okay. As humans, we're always going to be that way. We always want it to be fair in our favor, right? I always say, Dave, I thought your comm was excellent. And I think of, even we worked youth games together, Dave and I think especially when you get younger, varsity is kind of, and when you get to prep school, is they kind of know what they're doing for the most part, so you can just give shorter direction. When you get younger, and we'll continue to harp on this throughout training, but sometimes just explaining things a little bit more clear or a little bit more slow. I need you here. The ball is going to restart here. I'm not blowing a whistle. You need to stand here, right? Or take a step to your left, right? Very clear, very concise, simple communication, but now they understand what the expectation is a lot of times, right? And a lot of you will start with JV games or, even youth games and things like that. And I always say that some of the first ones we always see is the player picks up the ball. I always think of like an 8-year-old, right? Sometimes it's a high school player too, but they pick up the ball and they say, "Sir, I'm ready." Right? And they want the restart to be in, but they're 4 feet out of bounds, right? I need you to step over the line, right? And they just stare at you. I need to step on the field, and they stare at you. Can you come towards me? And they stare at you. And I've changed that many, many moons ago. And I say, look down at your feet. Where are you? And they go, "Oh," right. And they take one giant step over the line, right? But it's just understanding yourself as the player, right? Is they're not paying attention to what you say. They just know you're barking and they want to go because the coach is yelling, but they're not looking down, right? So it's understanding that side. And then I always just throw the quick story in the penalty one. Remember, we had a I won't get into full scale explanation, but we had ejections and all this stuff. We had to write a report. It was a college game. You have to list how many penalties were. And sure enough, one of the coach had written this completely nasty email directly from the bus, and was within 20 minutes of leaving the field. And we're like, oh my goodness, and the entire world's on it. And we go back and we called 20 penalties on each team, exact amount of minutes and time. It was the most perfect fairness. Like, we called everything. You know what I mean? And when, again, we didn't know it was 20-20. We had an idea, we thought it was fair, but when you go back and look at the statistics, we were spot on almost everything, every single period. We were that even. But games aren't designed evenly, right? As we know. So again, remembering that, where again, one team might have the ball more, one team might be more aggressive. So all of those things will come into that as we continue to try to gauge. All right. Coaches' expectation of officials. I'll lean on Velez or Witchy, if you two want to go first, or anybody else, be my guest.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to hop in. I mean, I think for me, they were I used to talk to my assistant coaches about this all the time as well. Just, kind of 3 C's around consistency, communication, and composure that we want to see out of officials. I think the consistency, if you're a good enough coach, and the game is being called consistently, you know how to coach your players to avoid certain situations, penalties, etc. So I think having that consistency out of officials is really important. And again, just I'm talking about within the game, not within like the entire CLOA board, but just the 2 or 3 guys that you have calling the game, that they're consistent, they're willing to communicate with you. It might not be the split second after a call is made, but that, during a timeout or during a quarter break, you can get clarification. And there is that kind of 2-way street when it comes to communication. And then the composure piece. I think it's equally as important for coaches to maintain composure on sidelines, and I think their teams often, kind of mimic the behaviors that they see modeled there. And I think for kind of, and I'm not saying that every referee needs to be even keeled, so to speak, but I think just having levels of composure, particularly in some of the leagues around Connecticut, and it's some of the best lacrosse in the country at different levels, and and it's intense, and emotions run high, and I think being able to be that composed presence on the field is just, I think, really appreciated by coaches.
Kevin or Casey, if you want to chime in, please.
I think Mike nailed it. I just want to double down on the communication piece of what Mike said, and then just structure, just general structure of the flow of the game. So, but yeah, I think Mike nailed it.
Not too much else to add.
You can always pass in my class. No, Mike, you did a super awesome job on that. I agree. I think my two notes are always open communications go a long way. I felt like when I was a younger official, I used to yell more and think that if I could be louder, sometimes they'd listen. And then I realized where I actually speak softly way more often, even though I'm a very loud, extroverted type of person, is because people match your energy. So if I talk in this normal voice right here, is the coach will quickly go for what to all of a sudden matching and talking in this voice, right? And you just bring everybody with you sometimes, and they're gonna be excited and they want something. But if you can try to bring them to a level place, it helps. And the other, I think, key takeaway is always. Again, not necessarily always in youth and JV. I'm thinking any kind of high school, especially when you get to prep levels as well, is the coaches are going to, what I call, make the crew in terms of they know how the crew composition is very, very quickly. They know who the veteran is. They know who the new official is. They know if you're timid. They know if you're a hothead. They know if you don't perceive they like you. I got called grumpy once, which I'm the person who's always cracking up and I'm never serious ever. And the coach was like, he's grumpy today. I don't want to talk to him. And they told a different official that. And he was like, all right, he won't talk to you. Like, that's it. Right. And then sure enough, 5 minutes later, he's like, Rob, can you explain that call to me? He goes, you told me not to talk to you today. Like, like if you want me grumpy, I'll be grumpy, man. Like this isn't going to work out for anybody, right? And so to that point, they try to then again find cracks in the crew, not to like tear us apart, right? But finding ways to get an advantage, right? Is that if somebody is not confident, they're going to totally key in on that person. If somebody's angry, they're going to stay away from that person because they don't want flags, and they might go to the neutral person. So understanding that part as you get into crews and as you get into games. The coaches are very smart and use us to their advantage where they can work us and they can find calls for later or put little seeds of doubt of, are you sure that's the correct rule that you applied? This is such a good way of asking it. And then it just eats at you, right? So again, part of what we try to do as training is how do we think through situations? All right, so we're going to move to parent-wise. Ryan, I'm going to totally pick on you since you said you were still a dad, and congrats on kid number 2 going to JWU on this one. But do you want to lead us off, please?
Yeah, 3 boys. The youngest goes to JWU.
Oh, geez, 3 of them? Man, I forgot one. Look at that. You got enough in your hands.
Yeah. Expectations of parents. I think a lot of them is going to be safety, right? Safety. If we take a step back, you guys were talking, like I believe it was Velez mentioned, the communication, composure was a huge thing. If I was to add one more thing, something that I do is go back to use terminology. I'm not saying like rules terminology. I'm not saying to quote phrases, section number, whatever. But say, for instance, for basketball, the coach says, that was a block or that was a charge. I'll say, listen, your play didn't have legal guard in position. And that's just using terminology that helps out a lot as well. And being composed, that helps out a lot. Going back to parents, to your question, Rob, I'm going to say safety. Safety, calling the obvious. I was one of the parents on the sidelines, like, he's guarding, or whatever it was. I was like, I don't even know what it is. I'm just yelling for no reason. But I'm looking forward to learning. So I think consistency and knowing the rules from the parents.
Tyler, can I pick on you to add anything since you've recently got off the sidelines with two little ones?
No, well, I'm officially still kind of on the sidelines, and I'm helping run the Wallingford Youth Lacrosse League too. So I know about parents all day. But yeah, they really anything that affects their son specifically, they worry about whether it's safety for sure, um, and then just the fairness of the calls, or my kid got slashed, or my kid got may not even know the word of the slash, or because my kid get hit in the arm. It's like, well, that's legal. You can't hit him in the back, you can't hit him in the helmet, you can hit him in the arm. So, um, my hardest part is that a lot of my parents don't know the rules and they like to scream from the sidelines thinking like they do. Um, so that's and like I remember even down to like the lightning level, like third and fourth graders, it's like the parents still like trying to look out for their kids and try to make it safe. So I honestly think that in an ideal world, the parents want the ref really they don't have to notice the ref because he's calling everything they want him to call, or he's keeping the game flowing smoothly and not affecting the outcome of the game is their big one for them.
I agree. Extremely well said on that. I think parents always, fall into that cliche of they want the officials to be invisible, right? Is what you always want. That's not a bad thing. We always kind of discuss ourselves as we're the third, team on the field, and our job is to, not be there in terms of being visible and being perceived. That's the best compliment we can get. And I always, Bernard always yells at me because I tell you in the first thing to do this, but you know, at, as you get comfortable and you need to know the situation. So I'm not saying do this day one or at all, but I found myself throughout the years, I talk to parents more when it's lower level games and not necessarily in the game. I'm not going to turn around during a call and things like that and explain it to them. But if there is a chance, I've done it at halftime before at high school levels and other things. If parents are doing a really good job, cheering and excited, I'll just tell a quick story where we knew there was a section of parents who had gotten ejected from a previous game. And their discipline was by the AD who was standing next to them that they had to cheer as loud as they did on the game they were ejected, but for the opposite team and cheer in a favorable manner, which I thought was the greatest punishment ever. Like you make them go cheer for the team, right? In a really good way. And they did a really good job. Like they paid attention to the game and they made specific things and they were calling people out and like in a very as everything you can ask for. And I remember at halftime, I walked over and I said the same thing. And they all, like three of them put their hands up and they were like, no, 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 I can't go today. Like I'm already on probation, double secret probation. Right. And I was like, I just wanted to compliment you and say, like, I wish more parents were like you. And like they immediately just start cracking up and they're like, do you know who we are? And I was like, no, right? And then I hear the story and then the AD tells me and everything else. But the idea of, again, a little bit of kindness and a little bit of positive reinforcement goes a long way. And to that point, when you're doing youth and JV, when there's not a lot of parents on the sideline, and if somebody is being difficult, you might not engage, you might choose to ignore, you might try to get by with it. To Ryan, your point, sometimes a very succinct technical terminology based answer is sometimes the best thing. You just tell them what it is and you kind of move on. And other times, kind of engaging a conversation a little bit helps a little bit, right? And the same thing of, hey, we heard you yelling things about the crease, like well, I always like to make sure parents know that, right? And things like that. I'm trying to think of an example, but sometimes when we do youth games, right, especially we don't do a lot in our organization. The Western Board does some, but when we do like 7-year-olds, we're by ourselves. So I'll dress everybody first because all the parents are on the sideline. And I'm like, hey, I need everybody's attention. Grandma and grandpa, you got to look over here, please. Right. And you get everybody kind of laugh for a second. I'm like, I'm Ref Rob. This is how today's going to go. Right. And the cool thing at U7, I think, is they have a 3-pass rule. So I make all of the family members count the 3 passes, right? And if they don't count them and the crowd doesn't yell it, it doesn't count and they can't score a goal. And it's that simple. So now you're engaging people, right? And I know these are way advanced. I'm not asking you to do them this year, but you start thinking of ways of how do we keep it safe? How do we keep it fun? How do we keep the attention off ourselves, right? And kind of direct it back up. You're here to support your young athlete, right? And they don't want you yelling and screaming because they're embarrassed and feel bad and they don't have a good experience. Can we engage them to be a better lacrosse community member? As very, very idealistic as that sounds, but we can do very small things that have large ripple effects, in my opinion. So I always say with parents of we don't just try to shut them off, right? As officials, can we try to engage? But understanding that social context is massive to be successful within that. We'll kind of go through these other ones quickly here, but anybody else who's another official, I think James and Tobias, you're officials as well, and Kevin C on this one, maybe ask you three. What's your expectation when you get to a game of your partners and your crewmates?
Probably just communication, and then understanding if if we don't have something or we see something different, to come together and talk about it. So I guess communication.
Yeah, I'd say communication as well, and I mean having your other officials back. I mean, there you could either be in sync, which is what everyone in the gym wants you to be, is in sync, or you can be on two different wavelengths, and that's not good for either.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost is show up on time. And if you're gonna be late, at least let someone know why, or like, hey, I'm gonna be walking in right on time. Can you get the pregame going so we can, have a smooth game? And then secondly, um, God, so in soccer, I'm like, can you try? Like, I need you running. I can't have you just walking around because it looks terrible. Basketball, you can dog it a little bit more because it's a smaller, playing field. So just put in a little bit of effort, have some fun, and keep it moving.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, go ahead.
I agree with effort, both hustling on the same page, communication, and also having each other's back at all times, and also being honest. If Rob says, "Hey, Dave, what was he out of bounds or not?" You made the calls, and you be honest with Rob. Rob, I didn't see it, but I made it out of bounds. Just communication, because that's this way you both know what's going on.
Yeah, awesome spots on that. I think comms is your best one, right? And again, we'll kind of get into this in a later, but I'm a little nuts when it comes to pregame of like Dave's been on the receiving end of it. I will text you every single thing you need to know if I'm in charge of my crew because I like getting there with like not enough time. Dave usually gets there way earlier than I do, which is nice on him. But like, I like getting there like when I'm supposed to. But I like knowing I will send you an aerial map, a Google map, like a satellite map, and show you this is where we're parking with this color, and then I will say this is a bathroom, and this is where we're entering the field, and this is what we're wearing, and this is what time, and this is what we're doing. That's how I work, right? I like making sure because I know once I get on the field, I can do everything, and I'm not being egotistical on that, but I'm just in game mode. Everything is easy from there. Making sure I get there, and the last thing I want to do, because I'm always running 5 to 10 minutes late perpetually in my life, that I don't want to get there and have no parking spot and the gate's locked and I need to go to the bathroom. And I get onto the field and my partner's on the field and he's wearing long sleeves and it's 96 degrees outside. Right. And now I'm running back and forth to the car and I'm losing my mind. And then when I get onto the field, I'm flustered. Right, as simple as it's, but it's that worst kind of feeling, right, of things aren't going well. So as simple as that. And again, I give way more, and again, I pick on the super old guard kind of guys, where like if you're not doing everything you're supposed to, you're gonna get screamed at. I appreciate the younger generation's approach of, hey, I'm gonna be 23 minutes late today. And it is what it is. Deal with it, right? But I'm telling you transparently what is going to happen. I'm going to be there at 6:53 for a 7 o'clock start. And to Kevin's point, can we make this work? And the answer is, yeah, you got to make it work. But I rather know that, right, versus not. And the same thing, I'll just use a very quick example. I had 2 games in one day, and I had a drive, and there's a high school with a locked gate, literally a bar, and you can't get down. And I couldn't get onto the field. And I'm calling ADs, and I'm calling my partners, I'm calling everybody, and all of a sudden, parents are like, what are you trying to do? I'm like, I need to get to the field. And it's a mile from the gate to the field. And I'm like, I'm not walking that right now. I'm just not. And so sure enough, there's this back place. It's at Massac High School. And there's this little ditch that's at a 45-degree angle that they throw trash down. And I drove my car down and my car fits 6 feet and I almost scraped the sides off. And I rode that sucker like Dukes of Hazzard. Right. And I parked next to it. And sure enough, I see both my partners are on the field. Right. And I'm like, I told you I was coming in 10 minutes and we were going to not go on the field because I needed to get through that gate. Oh yeah, we just decided that it was better if we just walked out there. Cool. What would you do if I had stayed the last hour at the gate? Oh, we didn't think of that. Why didn't you call me? Right? You know what I mean? Like, and meanwhile, we're doing 90 miles per hour on farm roads, not paying attention to road and stuff. So all those little things come into that picture of what can you do to make it go smoother. We'll end on the yourself one. I have Wick, Nolan, and Pat. Any of the three of you want to add? What's your expectation of yourself when you do a game?
I would say the biggest thing is just to be professional, but more importantly, control what you can control. Because the one thing you don't want is the game to get out of control, parents to get out of control, coaches to get out of control, because that's just going to make it your job 10 times harder. So just make sure you're consistent, make sure that you understand the rules. But I also think, too, you have to understand the situation. Like, there's going to be games, especially at the JV and the even every level, you're going to see a team that's clearly outmatched another one, and that can get very ugly. And you have to do your best to understand one team's going to be really pissed off because they're getting their butts kicked, and there's nothing they can really do about it. And you also have to deal with another team that's might be trying to run up the score, trying to rub it in. Understand that emotions are going to get hot, and you have to do your best to control that atmosphere.
So this is Pat. So I'm a newbie to it, although I've been around sports my whole life, played college sports. I want to be really good at what I do. So really, I'm going to put a lot of pressure on myself to know the rules inside and out, so I can handle any situation from an area of expertise. And I know I'm going to make many mistakes to start out with, but I want to minimize them and be really, really good at what I do. The rest I can take care of and control from there.
Um, I would say knowing your audience, there's a big difference between refereeing a youth game and Choate versus Exeter. It's like teaching, intro to math versus AP calculus, and knowing how to handle each situation. Kind of backtracking with the parents, with the youth games, you can kind of make a call. You call a slash. You got him on the arm. Slash. You got him on the leg. Kind of just explaining why in just a couple words why you made that call. It can kind of, at least parents know why you called. They may disagree with it, but at least they know why you did it. And, when you're at that top level, the kids are expected to know the game, know how to play the game, where to be, and you ref at that level.
Excellent. All around. Good job, everyone, on that. So we'll just kind of move through these in our last half hour here. And so again, we will do everything we can to not only teach you the rules, but teach you the mechanics on how we officiate. I feel the mechanics get you a lot further than the rules, and I'm not saying one is more important than the other, but mechanics are what we can control, as Nolan just said. And so that is how we go about things and how we administer things and what spots we're on and what we're looking at. And then we use the rules based on our mechanics to then interpret what we saw and how we call things, right? So to me, the mechanics go first because that gets you into position to then use the rules. And then you need your game management to then explain to everybody why you did everything correctly, in your opinion, right? And again, this is a sport which is ridiculously fast. Not that other sports aren't, but you have to interpret 4, 5, 6 moving things within a split second and make a call. And we just joked the other day on Saturday where we wished that we could go back to coaching because everybody on the sideline just yells offsides no matter what, right? It's just everybody immediately, as soon as a defenseman goes over the midline, and we'll explain what offsides is, but everyone just starts yelling offsides. And we look back at the coaching staff and we said, how many do they have? And they said, oh, there's only 4 guys there. Yeah, you need 7 for offside. So they're not even close, but they're just screaming and yelling, right? So it's that quickly you have to know things and know responses and everything. And that will come with time. we're big on, and so Steve Hinchy is our former trainer for decades in the organization. We and the game of lacrosse, we are massive in honoring the game. Again, it is the creator's game. And so part of that is, we like to say to not only the players, but everybody, just honor the game, right? Is understand to do the best you can and control what you can control and still conduct yourself in a positive attitude and as professional as you can, regardless what person you are involved in that. And that's not always perfect, but we want to make sure that that is always kind of somewhere in the background or the foreground of our mind. We want to remember that we're a service organization, is that this is about the players. The game cannot happen without us, right? It's just a practice without us. And once we're there, it becomes that game, and we're doing it because of the people who are on that roster for that day. And whatever game that you are assigned to, that's where you're meant to be for that day. And not getting overly existential or philosophical on you, but that's where that assigner thought you were best, and now you're there. And so your job is to make everybody's life a little bit better for that day if you can, right? By doing a good job and making sure everybody gets home safely. And remember, at the end of the day, it's a game. Right. I know, especially when you get to the high levels of college, there are livelihoods and there are mortgages and there are health insurances on the line. And I am fully aware of all of that. But at the end of the day, we should have a little bit of fun. It is a game at the end of the day. And the best part, and I truly, sincerely mean this, and why a lot of you, when I talked to a lot of you, and a lot of you did your initial emails and said, hey, I want to get back into it. I miss it. Right. And it gives you a chance to get outside, get exercise, get paid, do community service, and hang out, have a lot of fun, and tell a lot of really bad dad jokes and really a lot of corny jokes, right? And that's the best part, is that the guys in the organization and the ladies in the organization are really good people to hang around, and they're just good people, right? And so it makes it fun to do all of those different things. We'll transition, and I'll kind of move to a couple different things, and I'm going to go a little bit out of place on slides here. But again, we are going to send you a whole bunch of different things every week. But every single Tuesday, what we're going to do is we're going to recap, and I'll have all these links in here, but we're going to recap the meeting, put the YouTube recording, and then we're going to tell you what you need to do for next week. So the YouTube links will be individual, but they're all listed on the CLOA's training channel. So you can always just type in CLOA training if you need to. You can even see years past as well. We'll put them all in a playlist so they're easy to find for 2026 for you. We're also going to put all of the different materials are going to be in one folder for new officials. Again, if you're not a little bit older, and I say this nicely, and not as tech savvy, you need to double click the folders and you will find additional things come up. And so John and I will always update these for you. We're going to go through those equipments in a second here. But the big key is we try to make everything available for you where you can find it. And then we're going to email it to you every way. And then there's links in every email as well. So we purposely cross everything together, so it's really tough not to find stuff. We're also going to link to U.S. Lacrosse's official. You do not need to be a U.S. Lacrosse member for this. This is a public library, but there's a ton of amazing kind of things that are in here that we get into different. We're going to share the one manual we like, but there's also videos and things like this. I thought I had, yeah, there's tons of videos you can see and different things that go in. We'll make those available for you too. So if you want to peruse a little bit ahead, or you want to find additional materials on one topic you're struggling or you find more interesting, be our guest on that. And then again, we'll go through Arbiter in half a minute here or so once we do the new material list. But again, we try to make everything as accessible as possible for you. So with that said, we're going to go through, and I think we put it in here, and we're doing this one, John, right? The bottom one?
Yeah.
I'm going to click on that. Okay. So getting started is the biggest financial strain on this endeavor. There is a amazing video we put in. And so we have, where's Bruce?
It's right there
on here. Am I not seeing
right
it?
there. 10 minutes of Bruce
Yeah, the
Back?
10-minute
Oh yeah, 10
Bruce.
minutes. Sorry. I was
A
not
little bit
seeing where
further
it said
down.
10 minutes. Yes. So you can watch Bruce. We call it the veteran bag because it took him at least 90 years to accomplish getting everything in that bag. And you keep adding, right? And as you get older, you realize you just start replacing things and you get to a point from a new official to kind of a vet official in year 3 or 4, you buy everything at one point and then you start replacing. And so we also do, again, I like saying this out loud so I don't forget it, is if you feel you're not in a position to be able to get equipment, please let us know. We have different scholarships and grants available from the organization. We also do what's called an officials closet. So a lot of times if we have gently used or stuff that is getting retired out of a veteran's bag, a perfect example is I got yelled at once that my hat wasn't white, so I buy a new hat every single year at this point because I got yelled at once, right? So I have a hat from last year that is still perfectly good that I'm going to hand to one of you on this call, right, at some point, and we're going to pass things down. So if we can try to create savings and things like that, and again, it creates a better community, as we kind of said. So if those things occur where, hey, I think this is a little pricey, this is what's going on, we will try to do our best to kind of cut that cost for you. Again, that upfront cost is usually in that 200 to 300 range with shoes and things like that. You can bargain shop, you can price shop. We try to be very helpful with that. Again, blow your whistles will be at that clinic and that in person, so you can buy everything you need there. You can look online. There's a ton of different places. There's Umpatire, which is out of Minnesota, Wisconsin. There is all sports officials out of Philly. Blow Your Whistles is here in Connecticut. There's a bunch of different ones you can find on, but essentially we'll give you that full laundry list of what you need. That secondary kind of list that's in here we'll go over very quickly. But really what we suggest is you need to have kind of it, again, we call it a spring sport, but it is cold when you start. So having a black jacket is crucial. This is one of the much larger spends. It doesn't need to be CLOA. They're more rain slickers is a good way versus actual like winter stuff. Us college guys have this Vortex waterproof. John bought one without a logo and he really, really likes it. So that's why we suggested it's full waterproof, which is nice. So for when it's raining sideways in April and mud field, it's not as bad. Having, if it's whatever you call them, leggings or long johns and an Under Armour base and things like that is helpful, is just get all black, right? If you have that already, you don't need to buy it. Shoes, they've now gone to the UA Assert 10. They're actually I get an Amazon, I use Camel. If you're not aware of that, it's an Amazon price checker. So you can literally see if you're getting a good or bad price. You just throw the link in, which is really good. I have an alert set for a lot of these items. So the UA, this is Under Armour. If you pick Nike or whatever, is fine. But the Assert 10 is out. It's $47 for a pair of shoes that are pretty good and will last you the whole season, which is way cheaper than a $120, $130. Sometimes if you find a pair, the best thing, because it's really tough to find all black, buy 2 and 3 pairs if you can and you can afford it. So that way you have them. The same thing on Prime Day, they dropped down to like $35. My wife yelled at me because I bought like 6 pairs, right? They came in, she's like, what do you get? I'm like, I got a rep for 3 more years now. Right. That's a good way to get into it. Same thing on shorts. We suggest golf pants and golf shorts, right? Is check the different prices on those. Whatever your brand is, I prefer Under Armour. It fits me better. Whatever you prefer brand wise, if you're Nike, Adidas, whatever, stick with that because that's what's going to fit. John likes Blue Generation, so we put some links in for you. And again, you're going to need whistles, finger whistles, a hat. I'm going to go over to this other one real quick. A hat, I'll kind of go in order, a short and a long sleeve. Again, we're going to have that ordered through Blow Your Whistle. So they're going to have the patch and they're going to have the sublimated seal on your side as well. So we will send out the link once those are available, but you're going to buy those specifically. Shorts you can buy on your own. Oh, go ahead,
Let me
John.
just jump in for 1 second on the shirts. If you're not sure about the size, you can actually go to where this guy has he's in Monroe, I think it is, and has
Correct.
inventory, and you can try it and do that well ahead of time. Some of these things, it's really helpful to get the stuff, soon, because then you're not worrying about it at the last minute and you can try different sizes, see and check that out. But for the shirts, you pretty much need to go through Blow Your Whistles. There's not really an alternative to have the patch and stuff like that.
Yeah, and a lot of places, again, they will work with you. All sports officials is great. Not to say one's better than the other, but all sports officials will call you and ask you like your body type and your size sometimes and walk you through what you're buying. And they're like, hey, if you said you're 6'2", 180, you shouldn't be buying a medium, right? Like, and things like that. Like you put that in. So they'll ask you. Um, Again, I always if they're weather related, so think long sleeve jacket, I try to buy larger because I'm going to layer. Layering is really key, obviously. I know everybody lives in New England at some point, so you get it. And then I go usually a little bit smaller if it's shorts and short sleeves kind of thing. I'll go medium, and I'm like 5'10", 175, 180. So again, whatever works for you. Belt, as we said, black undershirt. Um, the jacket we talked about, pants, the socks. We want
The
ankle
pants,
socks.
the
Go ahead.
pants, a lot of people really like to have pockets, where they can put stuff in as opposed to long pants that don't have pockets. But
Yeah, and same golf. The golf pants work really well. They moisture wick. I find it. I just wear, the like Under Armour leggings underneath is a really good base. And even if it's snowing, I'm usually not cold because you're running, which is kind of nice. So again, you find what works for you, in that regard. Um, the socks, ankle socks, wherever, again, value shop like a TJ Maxx has a lot of them. Buying online, Amazon or wherever else you do is great. The hat, again, is that quarter pipes, the same as football. Remember, football pants are different than lacrosse pants because they have that white stripe on the side. So you have to be all black in lacrosse. So just for our football guys, remember that. The patches are going to come on your shirt. The finger whistle, get the finger whistle. Again, we'll show you examples. And there's what they called CMG, covered mouth guard, that's on it. It's got a little rubber piece. It's actually better, especially if you have expensive dental work like most of us, is that the last thing you want to be doing is chopping on plastic while you're running. So it helps. The penalty flags, John put in the other ones, but what's called long toss, and you're going to see they're a little bit better on those. And then the other pieces will kind of come, the gloves, the bag, things like that.
you
And then
want
there's oh, go
one
ahead.
more thing on the penalty flags, and we put it on the list. You want to have it with the black ball,
Correct.
that's a weight, so that when you put it in tuck it into your black shorts, you don't see this yellow hanging out. Just the black portion is hanging out and blends in with the shorts. The other thing I just want to mention on the long pants, just remember you're going to put a belt around that, so you want loops on the long pants. And you can add those later if it doesn't have it. If you have a tailor or something like that, they could do that. But if you can buy it with the loops, that's best.
And then the most expensive item is the timer. Timer, there's different types. So again, you can ask different guys what they prefer. There's like kind of the football one. Again, we're looking for a 20-second, and then a minute 40 is where it goes. So it's 100-second and a 20-second. I like the really small one. Again, we'll show different examples when we get into the training on that one. I just bought my second one. I've somehow made it through at this point, like 17 years, and I just bought it last year. It finally like died. I changed the battery 3 times, and it just made a weird, it was like woo, and I was like, it's time. So again, it's expensive to buy when you first start, but if you take care of it and you take the battery out and you change the battery and things like that, you're good. Other guys like the bulkier ones, some like a vibrations because they don't want coaches here, and I like the loud one because I'm not going to be messing with a massive one that's like 4 inches by whatever. So I like the tiny one that's on, but everybody's a little different in what they want. But it's very crucial doing high school. We have timing mechanisms in place, so we need those different timing elements to go into it. Questions? Again, this is just a very general. We're throwing a lot at you for equipment. We're going to go over this again to go over specifics, but we want to give you an abundance of time to start shopping for stuff. You don't need to buy stuff, but if you want to start putting in the cart and price shopping and thinking about stuff, this is always our number one constructive criticism is guys want to hear about equipment early. So we try to do it in this meeting. Questions?
It's more of a statement. If you do order from Blow Your Whistle, it's not like it's Amazon next day. It takes a week or sometimes more if you're ordering stuff through Blow Your Whistle, just so you know.
Hey,
Yeah,
Rob.
it's a dude in in the back of an industrial park. He does an amazing job, but it's a guy. Just remember that. Yes, Nick.
Yeah, on the shirts, do you want to try to corral all the orders and just have them bring them to the clinic, or let each individual do it online because they got to pay for them individually. But I just thought from a coordination standpoint, that might be easier for blow your whistles. Hey, I got, 16 new long sleeves, 16 new, yeah. And then you'd have to get the sizes and everything. It might be a bit, but one way
They
to
might,
think about it.
yeah, sometimes they'll do the same thing as you're looking. If you're only going to get shirts from them, we can look to save on shipping. They might bring them to the clinic for everybody.
Yeah.
So just things to think about. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I think you have the option. I think if you want to go there, one time I went there and I was had an issue with size because some of their waterproof shirts, which I'm not recommending you get, had weird sizing. But if you want to, you really want to you're concerned about the sizing, you want to get that early, you can go and see them. Otherwise, I think you can order it and just say you want it brought to the clinic, and then they'll bring it to the March first
Yeah,
clinic.
just make it perfectly clear that you need the
Right.
CLOA jerseys.
Yeah, on the link we gave them, it's bringing you to a page where it has the CLO.
Oh, right.
Yep. Yep.
All right, couple other things, and then again, we'll go through Arbiter real quick in the last 12 here. So again, just the professionalism. We're going to harp on this on every training, right? But things to think about as you move forward. And again, this is kind of everyday life. Just, what does it mean to be professional? What does it actually look like, right? And it doesn't mean that you can't get amped up and you can't get excited and you can't, sometimes bark back. We're not saying that, but what does it mean of showing up on time, doing what you're supposed to, and controlling those things? All items, all of you on this call have said already. And what is it looking like? And I forget, I think it was Dave or somebody said, that just showing up and looking correct gets you a long way, right? If you're the disheveled official and it's a brown hat, and we've worked with different guys over the years of, we don't allow sunglasses for a high school game. You have sunglasses, your hat's on backwards, and you're what drives me nuts is when guys have like this going on and it's unzipped and you go, oh, hey coach, what are we doing today? It doesn't look good, right? Is having this up tight and ready to go and simple. I always say I'm not a tie guy. I have somehow found a job where I don't ever have to wear a tie ever again so far. So, but when I get to the field, like I try to be as prim and proper as I can. Like I'll steam my shirts and I don't steam anything else in my life, right? But looking clean and approachable really gets you a long way into that. And that's that same point as John said of, even as simple as that of picking shirts that fit and things like that. I always had baggier shirts. And our theme for this year is you're always on video, especially at the high school level and now at JV and even youth games, you're on video. And the first time I saw myself on legit video, and I was like, I look like I'm wearing a tarp. Right. You know what I mean? And like it didn't look good. And so you start thinking of those things on, okay, how do I present? How do I go there? As we kind of say that you're on video of what to do when it's, when professional is not there or other people aren't there to watch you, right? And you'll start as you move up in your careers, you have a extremely healthy fear of observers or signers sitting in the stands. And I always say healthy fear of somebody's watching you or it's going to get back. And if you do something, not that it's going to be the end of your career and you're the worst official, but always just thinking of, am I on right now, right? And how do I, portray a good, not only a good official, but be a good official and kind of do the things when nobody's watching, which is what we've always been, as coaches, we've always said it, as players, we always heard it, but now we're again affecting that as officials. A lot of times, like I said, it's that little stuff that goes in of, and again, we'll teach you all these things, but noticing if the cones are out of place or taking an extra minute to explain to the table or explain to a coach who's trying to explain something, right? I'll use a quick example of on Saturday, we were in an indoor facility and the team doctor really was excited to tell us that, one of the doors, the vertical members of the door did, had metal on it and no foam padding. And he was like really excited to tell us. And like, he took 4 minutes to explain it, but that was important to him. Right. And then he went directly over to the home head coach and explained that we knew what we were doing and you could overhear him. Right. He goes, wow, these guys know they did a good job. They listened to me the whole time and they even asked questions about it, right? It's you saw the foam was missing and we understood it, but taking that extra time goes further and might buy you a little bit grace later, as we say. So those little things do add up. And again, setting that bar, not necessarily, yes, for the crew, but for yourself on what am I going to do today to make sure I can make this go as great as it possibly can. And as Pat said, absolutely perfectly, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes. Everybody makes a lot of mistakes, right? The idea is to try to mitigate those mistakes into things that we can correct and things that don't impact the outcome of the game. And if we can do that, it ends up being a really good afternoon out or evening or whatever. Again, we'll kind of go into those housekeepings in these last ones. So when you eventually get Arbiter access, I heard some of you have gotten in, some of you have taken, if you registered today, it might take a little time for that to kick over. Essentially, you're going to go into Arbiter. It's going to ask you, I'll kind of bring this screen in. It seems way more confusing than it probably needs to be. But essentially, if you have the Arbiter app, I am old now. You used to have to pay for it. It was $5 for 3 years. That was a bargain, in my very humble opinion, and things that cost money. Arbiter Sports is the app. It's an AS that comes up, which is a little bit different than this one. But download the app. It's absolutely massive to help you and keep track. You can also text out of it. At least it brings it to your phone so you can click your partner and it brings it on over. So that way it composes a message or you can call them right out of it and it goes to your phone app and things like that. It does directions and games and reminders and you can set text and all this great stuff. But essentially, if you go on the website version, you go log in. It really doesn't matter which one you click, but click officials. It just brings you to the same spot for whatever reason. That will ask you maybe two-factor, but usually your username and your password, and then it will bring you, mine is going to have a ton, and I understand that, but I want to just show you where you're going to have a few, you're going to have yourself, but you're going to see CLOA on there, and then you're just going to have official and central hub. So if you're going to click official, it will bring you up to an area. And then again, within that, you can go back to kind of your account and you can set up anything, I thought, if it wants to load. But essentially, you're on your profile thing. It doesn't want to go for me at this exact moment, I thought. Am I losing my mind, Vernon? But you can set up.
You're on WCLOA.
No, I was just clicking my account. I don't know why that one's coming up. Doesn't matter. But you can adjust your account. So the big thing we always ask, please put a picture, put your professional headshot if you have one, or just one that is generally you. One of the most, I'm in a number of organizations, you can see one of the most frustrating things is you don't know what your partner looks like. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but again, think of when you're running late and you're trying to run to a field, the game starts in 5 minutes and you have no idea what they look like. And they said they drive a gray SUV crossover. Find them in a parking lot. Good luck, right? You know what I mean? And so those little things, it also gets you to remember who people are, and you might remember personalities or experiences and not knew their names. So all of that stuff kind of helps. So putting that picture in, make sure all of your info is correct, especially your email and your phone number. You can click on payments. More and more schools are moving to what's called Arbiter Pay. You can go through and you can set up different bank accounts and put things in on this. And so again, you can set those up so that way you allow for Arbiter Pay. So that way if schools pay you directly through that, they can send it right on over. And then essentially, and John, you got to remind me where the ready to assign button is. Go ahead, Dick.
Hey, Rob, I'd go back to your profile and make sure you set your limits, your travel limits, and your work time.
I don't know why it's not bringing me to my actual profile, but neither here nor there.
If you want to go to CLOA official, down, go there. Will it bring it up?
Right.
No, it's just
okay. Yeah.
I feel like maybe because I'm streaming, but
settings.
Yeah, within settings, go through the settings as well. Just take a quick look. But the same thing. So I have reminders. I like getting everything, to be honest with you. So they'll set those on over. again, when we get into, you'll eventually, your schedule will all be listed here. But then the big thing is going to be within the blocks, and we're going to check on there's a ready to assign button that should be in your profile. Again, mine's not loading for you, so I apologize. But in the blocks, to Dick's point, there's a travel limit. So you can set what you'd like on these. You can do it by day. So a number of you said you worked in one location and you lived in another. I couldn't remember that for a second. Obviously, 200 is not within the state. There's not 200 miles to a state. So I just set them over because I'll go wherever they want me to go. And then I'll have a conversation if it's not great. And so I always call it I do at least an annual pilgrimage to the northwest corner, which is Litchfield County, which all of you might at some point, maybe not Wick, you're out in East Lyme, but is gorgeous in the spring. But there's nothing out there besides cows, farms, and good lacrosse. So you might take a journey up there, but you can reset it. I'm fortunate enough. I work and live in a close location, so I just have it set for my house, which is closer to East Haven, even though it's in New Haven. But essentially, you can set it by zip code, and again, you can change the day on that. With that said, we'll include a YouTube that somebody else did, but essentially, you can go in and click, as you can see, and you can choose your different organizations. You can do all or whatever. And essentially, this is way easier, in my opinion, on some kind of PC, laptop, or Mac versus doing on your phone. Your phone gets a little wonky, in my opinion. It's just not as clean. You can do it, but it's not as clean. This is kind of nice and self-contained. But essentially, if you said, hey, I have, I don't know, a wedding on January 29th, you can pick any association you want, and you can literally click on the date after selecting what type of block that you want, and it'll go in and put in blocks for each one of the organizations. And then if you need to edit that, you can click the pencil. What is good is you can put in what it is. You can also put in, I'm just going to kind of get ahead, and you can put in a partial block. So I'm going to do that real quick for you and show you if everything doesn't break on me, which is very possible. That's excellent. And so I broke everything on it. And so if you do that partial block, on that partial block, I might have froze it out. You can put a time range. Go ahead. Who's talking?
Yeah, it's loading, Rob.
Yep. So you can put a time range on that. Again, most games will start, prep schools might start 2:30 or sometimes 2, sometimes earlier. If you have full open availability, you don't need to put in partial blocks for every day. But again, you can, as this does not like me right now, you can click multiple days as well. You can even do a date range. So if you want to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if you have a consistent schedule, cool. You can go in and on that date, so I'm just going to view to hopefully not make this freak out. But let's say I blocked a portion. So let's say it was 2:30 to 5. And let's say I had an earlier game with a different organization. Let's say I had a college game. I might put there's a bunch of you Wesleyan people in here. So I'll put that at Wesleyan, done by 5p, something like that. And the assigner would be able to see that. So when they go in, right, and they might see that you might be partial, you might not be their first pick, but he might be in a jam, and he might say, hey, we need to assign him. And it's because you're not going to go in and change your individual zip code for that day. You can at least write a note and tell him what's going to happen. So that way he might now, instead of putting me in, let's say, Brantford, he might put me at Middletown High School. And I might be able to go from Wesleyan to Middletown High School and be able to make it in 30 minutes and be good to go. If that makes sense. So the more info you put in, you don't need a novel, but if you put smaller things in, or to some of you said hey, out by 3:30, I'll be in the car at 3:30 type of deal, work, or if something's different, whatever it may be, you can put those in and Dave will take a look at those. Questions on
Rob,
blocks? Go ahead.
At a minimum, guys, you want to put in your work hours for I would suggest from March 15th through June 30. Put the hours where you definitely are not available. Because that way you can just set the whole week, you can set the whole month and just put in that base, because Dave's going to start assigning games. So he's going to know, he needs to know your work hours at a minimum. Yeah.
Correct. And
Right.
same thing is again, you can go up to, as we said, you can do different time periods. You can either edit it, or if you need to put in a firm block. So if it's, hey, I'm in Atlanta for these 3 days and I have zero capability, you can put in firm. He'll call you, but if it's a not firm block, he can sometimes schedule over your block, if that makes sense. So he's going to communicate that. But if you just said, hey, I can get out of work, I need to get out at 2:30. I said I was going to be out at 3. He's at least going to be able to put the game in for you, and then you can go in and edit your block. The big key as well, this goes to comms, and the kind of last comment I have here is continually update the best you can on it. You don't need to necessarily be worrying about June 15th tomorrow, but if you know you have things out there, and then week to week, month to month, if things change, because again, you got to remember schools change times, they change dates, weather happens, things move around. There's a lot of games. There's generally, I'm not joking, 10 to 20 edits per day that occur sometimes, because you're talking about sometimes there's 50, 60 games, and sometimes we've used 100 games in a day. There can be a lot. Sometimes it's 20 minutes or a half hour. But again, that makes all the difference. Those of you who officiated, you understand that. Where if you said, hey, I'm going Madison to Guilford to Milford in 3 straight games, if they change a half hour, I can't make that second game now or third game, and the domino effect of falls. So all those things all come with communication. We'll share Dave's number and email with you next week.
The other thing you just want to
That's all. Go
remember
ahead. Yep, you're
on the
good.
partial blocks, if you don't have something blocked, Dave's going to assume you're available. So if you can only do an afternoon game, you want to block the day up to the afternoon and then block it from the end of the day on, if you don't want a night game. So you can put in 2 blocks on the same day, one early, one very late, and then leaves room for the game time that you can make.
All
One
right.
quick question
Yep,
on
go ahead.
I kind of went through. I saw the video on this, so I started doing this already,
Mhm.
and I noticed you put the little note on that one specific day. I did a full date range and put a note associated with it. So is that note
Yeah.
only associated with the first day, or is it associated with all the block I put in?
I believe you can do, if you're doing the bulk one, that note will stick to all of them.
Okay, because I
And
basically
so,
I just shut
yeah.
off weekends because I said I don't know my kid's lacrosse schedule yet. Because I want to be able to see his games too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
and the same thing. So you can go right and see, for example, like I don't put in even on these, I don't put in, I might put like one in, I might say where I'm at. Again, I start earlier than all of you, and this isn't a shot, I promise you, but like I'll start putting in notes once we get to March, if that makes sense. Is that they don't really interfere, but I'll start putting in every time I have a college game, I allow the high school signers to know where I'm going for college, if that makes sense. So that's my method. So whatever
Yep.
works for you, but just more communication, because I know I will totally pick up a game on the way home. I'll go make an extra $100 on the way home. And my wife's happy because we get takeout, right? Deal. So again, I'll put that on there as versus saying, no, I can't do it. And then I even put my travel time, like I'll keep them short where if I know I got to bounce, and that's the same. I always say the same thing of depending on what you want to do. If you want shorter amount of games, you don't want to do a ton of games. If you want to work as much as you can for any reason, if that's to make more money, more experience, or you're just available and want to get out of the house, whatever you feel works, we're okay with, if that makes sense. James,
And
did you have one? Yeah.
Yes. Where can I find the list for like everything that you need to buy? I've already started the process because I get my basketball stuff from Blow Your Whistles, and they send out emails. For everybody that the new guys, they have a sale I think going right now on lacrosse gear. But like, where do I find that list like for myself to pull it up?
Yep, it's gonna be on the Google Drive. So we're gonna send out the YouTube, the Google Drive, and all the recap stuff tomorrow in one PDF. So you have it. And then you could just bookmark the links to those.
Hmm.
Anybody, so I'll just kind of go to the recap, and then again, John and I and Dick usually stay on till the last person. So if you got questions, but we want to be respectful of the time we said we were going to leave. So we are going to send you again the recap, the homework for next week. We're not expecting you to read all 120 pages of the rule book, but we are going to give you the US Lacrosse Library. So if you want to go through any of the slides or the modules or the videos or stuff like that and peruse around, you can. We're also going to give you the college rulebook because that is a PDF that is available free for everybody. With that same spot in the Google Drive, there's going to be the rules differences for college to high school. So you have a reference guide on what's actually different. And then once we confirm who's in the class, because we're going to give them an extra 5 or 6 days since we have a few people, we're going to figure out a way. We have physical rule books. We're going to try to get them and then figure out how we meet with you. If not, we're going to mail them out to you. So you have a physical rule book
That's the
for the high
public
school.
high school
Correct.
NFHS public school rulebook. Yep.
Correct. So for now, if you want to get a jump on anything, college rule book is great, along with the document that shows you the differences, the resource library, and then the old kind of adage of two things is not only mentally prepare for it, you can do that if you're not familiar with the game, is there's a million different videos everywhere on games. Try to watch a full game. Just notice the officials on what on earth is going on and listen to great announcers like Nolan and other people who will take you through things as well. You can go to college websites. They have a lot of recap videos and a lot of, again, YouTube recap. Wesleyan actually has a full database of almost all their games are on YouTube too, which is a great spot to look to be able to watch those, start looking at the equipment. And then as silly as it says, start stretching, just go for a walk or go for a run. It doesn't need to be 10 miles, but as many of you said, you have younger children. I'll put that 15 and under, right? Go for a walk with them, a mile, 2 miles at a time. It makes a difference the time we get to March to just start activity if you're not doing anything right now. It's a lot real quick when we get into it. You're going to start with a scrimmage and partners, and we're going to rotate, and it's going to be great. You're going to run a mile and a half in your first game, and it's not going to be bad. And then you're going to get to a JV game. It's going to be 3 miles, and it's going to be over your head. It goes from
Rob,
there. Yes.
does snow shoveling count?
It does, but just be
Okay.
careful of your cardio, everybody. Snow shovel is a very big cardiac risk, as we all know. So stretch and all that good stuff. Invest in a snowblower. So we will stay on. Everybody else is free to go if you don't have questions. If you need anything, text me is the best way. If not, email me is fine. And we will see you next Monday. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, you want to turn off the recording?